Peace, everybody. We live again. This is Rastafunk's Internalize. I'm yours truly, Rastafunk. And I hope everybody's day's gone, well. I hope everybody's doing well. And we're going to let a couple of people come in before we get started. As you know, I do HVAC as well as music. And today, actually the last couple of days, the adventure has been about refrigerant leaks. And just to put you up on game, when a HVAC technician tells you got a refrigerant leak, they should be trying to find the leak and fix the leak, not just, charge you for some new refrigerant. So anyway, that's been my journey over the last couple of days, is finding leaks for people. And it's what I do. So, we were able to get the people right, what they need to get. That's what we do. So, like I said, we're gonna let a couple of people come in, and then we'll get started with tonight's conversation: socialism as opposed to social capitalism. Yeah, set a couple of things up, make sure that I can do exactly what I'm trying to do. Okay, let's see now. So I'm going to put in the chat if anybody decides they want to join in with what we got going. You got any input you want to, join in, you're able to call in the chat. So what we're going to do is, let me go here. Boom. Did something different than what I was trying. There we go. And boom. So yeah, as we go along with tonight's go on with tonight's conversation, if you have any input, you can just hit the link in the chat, and that's what we call calling in, and we'll be able to talk, and you can add anything, or you may not like what I'm saying, so that's relevant as well. It's all relevant. So we appreciate everybody. And we also have the Cash App at the bottom. So if you do feel so inclined, we appreciate you for helping us out and going along with us. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to set a couple of things up so that as people come in, we're able to, have it right, have it steady and really. Boom. And the next thing I can do is do this. And boom. All right. I think I did what I was trying to do. Yeah, man. All right. So once again, we're Rastafunk Internalize. Tonight we're talking about socialism versus social capitalism. I'm going to read the definition of socialism so that we are talking about the same thing. I don't want to get it wrong. It says a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned and regulated by the community as a whole. Now, as far as socialism goes, I would say Cuba would probably be the best example of it working that we can actually study. There have been other examples of it. However, I would say Cuba has been the most uncorrupt socialism that we've seen in our lifetime. For lack of knowing all the ins and outs. And so, with that said, you have the only negative part has been the United States and the Western powers have pretty much put an embargo or sanction and kept them from being able to actually thrive as a nation with any natural resources that they may be able to um, build their nation from. So how it works is um, no matter how you're dealing with your theory of what you think the society should be, ultimately, whatever natural resources you have are leveraged throughout the world society and the world economic vehicle in a way that you can reap the benefits and get the most return from your natural resources. Now, I'm not sure what all Cuban has, as natural resources, as far as maybe sugar, maybe coffee, and it may be some other things. I'm not totally sure about that. But I am sure that they, when you talk to people, that they appreciate the socialism and the social society that they have. With that said, it can work. However, when you're dealing with a world that fights against it, why is it so necessary when there's other ways that you can win? So Cuba's a special circumstance because politically speaking, when it started out, it was um, at odds with the United States, which is its closest major rival. So in order to deal with that, they um, went to Russia, and that was the United States' number one rival. So Cuba is a little different in how it started and what it'll take for um, reconciliation with the world. And it's not Cuba's fault, but we're just saying it'll take a little something for Cuba to get it back together with the world. With that said, um, socialism um, is one of the major ways of living that you'll get when you're talking to Pan Africans in the Pan African community, Um, and that particular mindset has kept the Pan African community, especially in earlier years, from seizing economic opportunity from even wanting to deal with economics in the West because of the capitalistic nature of it. And capitalism, what is that? So let's go back to the dictionary. So we're talking about the same thing. Because I just want to make sure that we're all on the one. Capitalism is an economic system based on the private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit, basically. Okay, so what happens is the person who has the most capital, which is money, assets, buildings, land, whatever, um, has the most, not necessarily rights, but they have the most, they can do the most within the society. They can do the most within the society because they have the most money or capital to spend to do the most. And that's just a basic, I'm not trying to really get into economics 101 totally, but I'm trying to get through the conversation as far as us having a basic understanding. And so what happens is most people who have started at a lower rung, it is not easy to become one of those who has all the capital. Even if you work hard and do the things that they say you should do, it's still not easy. It's still relatively difficult. And that's because capitalism isn't about you coming up and running with the people with the most. It's about the people with the most continuing to make more. And how do they make more? By squeezing out any profits they can get. And how do they do that? Well, one way is, let's say, in the future, people won't be working for companies where they're able to implement robots. Robots don't take a break. Robots don't get, the only payment is the first payment to get the robot there, so you're not paying them an hourly wage. Robots for a company that's trying to make money and find ways to make more money. Robots is the bomb. you know, just like AI. AI is the same thing. It's what will power the robots to do these things in the future. So that's how they squeeze out the profits. And what happens is the people working for them who may have thought they were going to catch up because they're trying to save and they're going to invest, they're going to do this and do that. Now they don't have a job. There's a robot doing it. So that is why a lot of people don't like capitalism, especially in the West. And what happens is you have a great number of people, especially in the Pan-African community, who checked out on that system altogether. So what happens is Steve Coakley used to say that the CIA has a certain threat calculator, and it's certain threat levels. And so he used to say Steve Coakley want to save Africa, but on the threat level, Steve Coakley don't have money for a plane to Africa. He's not a threat. And so we've done a lot of talking about how we would like the world to be and what we think is wrong with the world, but there hasn't been a lot of action. And most of that's because of finance. It's because of economics. So checking out of a system is not necessarily the way to go. And you'll find that systems are people who've tried to raise us up within certain systems. Economics was part of what they were taking care of when you dealt with it. Marcus Garvey had businesses, so he hired people to run them. The Nation of Islam became, had businesses that they had so many people that they could just support, but because they were in the black communities, black people supported them as well. So they were able to thrive during their time. Black Panthers, they didn't have businesses as much as they created programs that were the programs that work within a capitalistic society, but they were trying to practice socialism. So why I say the programs work within a capitalistic society, because when it's all said and done, there are people who are not going to reach the goals, and what happens is the government accounts for that, and they use some of the Black Panthers ideas. Free breakfast in school came from the Black Panthers. The WIC program, where mothers, can get milk and things like that when they're pregnant, or that whatever all the WIC does, but that comes from the Black Panthers. So that's how it works. And whether you know it or not, within a capitalistic society, your taxes pay for certain things that you don't necessarily my point is, there are social aspects to all capitalistic societies, like the fire department and the police department. Those are things that you're not necessarily paying for, although you are paying for it in taxes. But your library, but these are things that that they're readily available when necessary, but you need those things to run a capitalistic society, because if you had a for-hire fire department, I would really hate if there's any choices to be made, like to go to this rich neighborhood over, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, that would be crazy. And so there's a reason there's no song called Fuck the Fireman. So with that said, capitalism has been something that a lot of people shied away from and checked out of it. And I understand that I was one of those people at one time, because I didn't understand it at all. And that's another thing, to be raised in a system that you're not taught anything about, like, what is that all about? How are you supposed to thrive? And so when you're not given any information about it, it makes it very difficult to change your circumstance at all. And like I said, it's already built for you not to be able to change your circumstance, because the playing field from wherever you start is already not a level playing field. So if you're start out and your father was multi-billionaire, then you start out way ahead of everyone else. You start out and you had no family, and you had nothing. Then it creates a situation where you're really hungry and you want to make it, and you may do anything to try to make it, but the odds are stacked against you, very much. To even reach a so-called middle class, not to catch up, but just to even get above the water. It's just set up in that way. So that is why a lot of people, they just think it's unfair and that everyone should be accounted for. And that's why a lot of people who theorize that socialism is the best thing. And as I said, it can work. We've seen it work. It works in Cuba. Their only problem is they're not able to leverage their natural resources so that it can benefit the country, as other countries are able to do. And that's because they have sanctions and embargoes, and the West just won't deal with them in a business way. They've opened up some avenues, but for the most part, it's still sparse, to say the least. Um, and so, that's the thing about socialism. It's a great idea. It can work, but what keeps it from working is understanding how to leverage your situation within a capitalistic society that tends to fight those situations, to tends to prefer to um, kill those situations completely and not give those situations a chance to grow at all. Why? Because if you have social if you have socialist republics sprouting up all over the world, thriving and working and still being able to do business for their country in a way that it benefits the country, as opposed to individuals who are able to ascend on the country, buy up the resources and use them for themselves, because that's the option. That's capitalism. Um, they tend to kill those situations so that they're able to do that. Come in, ascend on it, and buy up the land and the resources and use them for their own personal corporations and not for the people of that nation. If that happened, no one would want to live in a capitalist society. Is that simple? No one want to live in a capitalist society. Now, when you get in as far as Europe and even I believe Canada, they have free healthcare and free college. Like they're educating their people and they're making sure that people are able to stay healthy in their capitalistic um, in society. America doesn't do that because America is the place where they're going to squeeze every dollar from every crook and cranny that they can. They're going to drip it dry. That's how they do. That's the point. And immersing yourself in knowing these things and this type of society can only corrupt your humanity. So that's the thing about capitalism as far as how it works in the West and how it works in the mind of the people who are raised up in it. It becomes a race. They call it the rat race. But that's a misnomer because the rats are just racing for crumbs, falling off rich people's tables. So they're still not telling you the truth when they say it's a rat race. They're still keeping you focused on what's going on down here and not what's really happening in the winner's circle. They're keeping you focused on the loser circle. And to deal with the overall theme, that's how you get the wrong Black America. You building the wrong person when you're building them with the values from this particular society. Now, I would have to do a little bit more research to tell you exactly what is the incentive in Cuba to be an innovator, to be a doctor, to be someone who leads your society, but everything is equal. I don't know exactly how that works. Maybe they get a little something. Maybe doctors do stay in a better house than the average person because they're a doctor. I don't know, but I do know that that aspect of incentivizing the people in your country to want to be better, and to build better and to create better is important. If I can be a doctor in America and get paid, you know, $500,000 per surgery, why would I want to just stay in Cuba and chill with nothing? I'm helping people, but what do I get from it? I use the doctors in particular because Cuban doctors train doctors around the world. Yeah, they got a really high end health system. Um, Without knowing, like I said, everything, um, I do know that um, they train doctors from around the world. At one time, they had a program where black people from America could go there and take and go to medical school for free. I'm not sure how that if that program is still there, but I know at one time in the '90s, late '80s, it was that way. They were training doctors. Come here, learn to be a doctor, learn medicine. I know throughout the pandemic, they went around the world helping other countries manage the pandemic. So, from that standpoint, I say, Cuba is a great example of socialism work. However, however, part of the problem why socialism isn't quite, why we're not quite ready for something like that is culture. The reason I'm not going to America to make $500,000 of surgery is because of my culture. It's because I care more about my people and where we come from and our story than I do about leaving and making money. I know the world is keeping us and holding us from being as great as we want to be. And so my culture keeps me in Cuba. That's why the doctors are there. Hmm. Culture. But if your culture is running the rat race, and all you're trying to do is what you perceive as winning, win. All you're trying to do is win by what you perceive as winning. Excuse me. And as we can see, if you look out your window, who's winning really? Collectively, who's winning really? You know? So that is socialism. And as I said, in the capitalistic society, what we've seen is, for the most part, um, it's the people who start out at the top and with the money are the people that are able to pretty much stay there. And the people who start out at the lower ranks, pretty much they're moving in between the lower ranks, because it's not a secret that one major event can push people back 5 to 10 years in the lower ranks. So you might have been middle class, had a major event. Now you trying to figure out where you're gonna stay. But that's the nature of Western capitalism. Which is why I didn't add that part in the title. Because when it's all said and done, the most capitalistic society has a free fire department. So you're going to have some social aspects to any capitalistic society. So that's why it's socialism versus social capitalism. Now, what you find is the fastest growing nations and economies in the last 50 years hasn't been through socialism. However, what you'll find also in most of these countries is they were, because of understanding how capitalism works, they were able to leverage their resources and create a socialistic environment within their country. You got Singapore, you got Rwanda, you got Botswana, you got El Salvador. Those are 4 examples where they use their natural resources or their natural abilities to leverage what they could do within their country against the world market. They use that money to create socialistic aspects to their society where everyone's taken care of and everyone is getting a part of and sharing in the greater economies, the greater economic growth of the country. And that's actually what the Western powers, especially America, keeps Cuba from doing. Leveraging their natural resources so that they could have more money to do the things they're doing in their socialist society. You see how that works? There's no way you're not going to be dealing with some capitalistic aspects in running any society. Why? Because the majority of the world isn't saying, give me your coffee for our bananas. They're saying, buy our bananas and buy our coffee. through mediums of exchange. And because it's that way, you have to participate in order to build up your country in the way the world is working right now. It's how China came up, it's how Japan came up, and how the other four countries I just talked about. It's how the United States and all the Western countries came up. Except Europe doesn't have any natural resources that can sustain the world or that matters. Even their cattle came from Africa. Their cattle industry. They don't have enough to just start having industry for the world or even for their continent or peninsula. Yeah. United States, they have some natural resources. They have one or two, but they still have companies leveraging other countries' natural resources instead of the country able to do that, which becomes the problem of the Western style of capitalism and how it evades the world. If it was a world social capitalism environment, it would be a disadvantage for those without natural resources. At that point, the ones that are on top right now, without having those natural resources at their disposal, they would quickly start to fall. And some of the ones at the bottom would start to go up because they actually are now able to leverage their own natural resources. And really what I'm talking about is a conversation that I hear sometimes. And, you just don't want to hear it no more. Nobody, socialism is cool, but you're going to have capitalistic aspects. You're going to have to understand how to make money and how to innovate a situation in order to leverage against the world. And the only way to do that is to deal with social capitalism. Not sure if it's the planes flying over that's messing with my little internet. This particular studio is by Hartsfield Jackson Airport in Atlanta. So, we get a little interference sometimes from the airplanes. But yeah, getting back to the situation at hand and what we're talking about. It's easy to theorize how giving everybody a piece of the pie is the fair thing to do. It's easy to theorize that. However, where do you get the pie from? You see, if you don't have the pie, what are you giving people? And that's the bottom line where understanding capitalism works. And it doesn't have to be like we learned it in the United States. It doesn't have to be based on a credit system that values your debt as opposed to value you getting out of debt. But when you're on top and you have assets, then that system works for you. But if you're continuing to borrow, but you don't own a business that will eventually put you on top and pay that back, and you're making money and now you can get loans that you don't have to pay back, that you don't have taxes on, those type of deals build your business even bigger. You're able to continue going up, and your credit gets better, because the debt that you're incurring is only something that you're going to pay back quickly to incur an even greater debt, because you're making more money, because you're building a business and building on, whether you build a bigger kitchen or add more equipment, all of those type of things. But the credit system becomes a challenge when you're trying to come up from the bottom. That's why as soon as you're 18, they send you credit card notices. Here you go, spend it, get in debt, without ever learning these things in high school. What's gonna happen? What do you do when it happens? How do you make it work? You know, you just, if you don't have parents that teach you, or you're not a part of some type of program that teaches you, because the public school system isn't going to teach you. It's not going to teach you. So what happens is social capitalism is the best way. That's the best system. To just admit, you have to have some of both ways in order to raise your system up. You got to have a pie for the people to get a piece of it. That's the concept. And in order to get a pie, you have to deal with the capitalistic system that is already running and making things happen and going, until that mechanism breaks down some type of way. That's what you're gonna have to do. But it'll only break down for another system that you'll have to deal with in order to leverage your natural resources. You can have a closed ecosystem. However, leveraging your natural resources, or whatever it is you can, like for instance, Singapore and China in particular, the Asia known for natural resources, not that feed the world, except labor. Japan create manufacturing and are selling their products around the world, and they had some of the best, and still have some of the best products, best cars. China start manufacturing and selling their products around the world. They have some of the cheapest products. Singapore decided to get to manufacturing the future products. And they're doing it on a level like Japan of excellence. El Salvador, they did it with Bitcoin, with the future currency, the future way money will move, or the future way that you'll be able to deal with assets and sell them and contracts and all of that type of deal. They leverage that aspect, and within the next 6 to 7 years or so, each citizen will be close to being a millionaire. They got a nice pie that everybody's able to get a piece of. Botswana, diamond. They had a diamond mine. They leveraged it, and now everybody's able to get a piece of the pie. Social capitalism. We know that socialism is better than capitalism if you're living in a fair society and everybody can get something. That's great. We know that. Who wants to get up and have to race to live? You know, who want to do that? Really? I'm sure, you know, there's many people who feel helpless, like, what else you gonna do? But that's what I'm telling you. There's options out here besides just what the West has taught us. And there's other places to live that are actualizing these options. You may be fortunate to maintain over here. And that's a good thing, you know, for you individually and your individual family. But without a real culture of community, without people, as we said yesterday, stepping up, without people stepping up, where's that going to lead us? What is it? Where has it led us now? And why we want to think about these things is, you know, a lot of times you're voting for the lesser evil. First of all, if you're going to vote and you're not competent on what's going on in your local elections, you're not an educated voter. But as for leadership, what you're not taught to do is understand and compare good leadership versus bad leadership. And to understand why a situation isn't actually great. Who want to live somewhere else? I hear it all the time. Well, leave then. Don't be here. Like, you know, this is the greatest place in the world. I hear it all the time. It's not. It's the greatest place to race. But if you understand how the story of the world works, then you realize when you see the upper people starting to invest in other places, because this race is about rent. This race is about rent, for real. But what else is there? Um, how about the people where all the resources are starting to want to deal with their own resources? How about the people where all the resources are because you got these phones? See, part of America's rise and American people loving America was so much was being able to see American stars and being able to see celebrities and all these things that the media pushed out there is what made us great. And when you have these phones and people have internet all over the world, they start to want their country to be great, and people in there, they want to be great in their country. So that entire sentiment creates a undertone and an undercurrent of wanting more and wanting to see better. I see these houses and these people have lights and everything works seamlessly. Why do I have just a village, with one light? And the people at the top, they foresee all of these things because they're trying to see how they can keep their money. So they're looking for investment. They're looking to get in at the bottom before it rises. Buy low, sell high. That's what investment is all about. That's why you're able to, that's why rich people are able to live off, their assets because they knew that they were going to grow. That's why they got involved in it to begin with. However, over here, you're dealing with people just not caring about anyone else, so they'll step over people in the street. And in other societies, you don't have homelessness. There's other societies that are winning that you don't have homelessness. That's social capitalism. Because you can't win without leveraging your resources, whether they're natural or whatever, against the world's economy. So you have to have supreme control and understanding of that concept and figure out how it works for you. Japan, it worked by manufacturing electronics and cars and doing it at a very high level. Well, this stuff became known as not breaking down and, being really nice. China did the same thing, but at a very low level. They just was putting it out. Who cares what it's about? And they got into other types of manufacturing. They really became the manufacturer of the world. Shoes, computers, whatever. Whatever you need, you can go to Alibaba in China and they'll make it. Or they have somebody who already has it, and you can buy it in bulk and sell it around the world. I got introduced to these 5-finger shoes. That are shoes that each one of your toes can fit in the tip, as opposed to just having a pointed tip or a round tip or a square tip. You got 5 little tips that your toes fit in. 5-finger shoes. Well, the people that make them are called Vibram. And Vibram shoes are very expensive, $200. And I bought some and I love them, and it dawned on me to just Google and see if I could find some other ones. And the best ones I found that were way more classy, way more cooler, even built better. These have to be built better. Came from China. So China, makes stuff for the world. Singapore decided to do high-end futuristic electronics. The component parts to the high-end futuristic things coming up. Chips, that type of deal. Botswana had diamonds. El Salvador leveraged Bitcoin. They figured we're going to get away from the world monetary system, um, and not invest in them and their monetary way. We're going to invest some of our money in this futuristic currency. And now they have, I think, an $80 million surplus in the country because of Bitcoin. Great investment for the country. Great way to leverage what your country can do against the world's economy. I know in Rwanda, well, I'm going to back up. I know the things I know about Rwanda definitely have to do with capitalism, and I know that they have social aspects and they're dealing with the same thing, but I don't know what their main um, way of dealing with the world economy is. Not sure about how they deal with that, but the policies are working. They make it easy to start businesses in their country. Why? Because they understand that capitalism is where what's happening and how you grow your economy by having people come in your economy and invest in what you got, whether they buy land and build businesses and pay taxes, for what they're doing. But that's part of building your economy. So they create an environment that's easy for people to come in and want to innovate their society. But they also have social policies put in place that work for the people. So when it's all said and done, um, you could be in a capitalistic society, but you're still gonna have a fire department. So you're really playing when you're saying um, we don't want socialism, or you're saying socialism versus capitalism. It's both. It's social capitalism. Is the best way to run a country until we know otherwise or have other options. It's social capitalism, not socialism. That's great, but even Cuba would love to be able to leverage their natural resources against the world's economy. Their cigars, their tobacco. Tobacco is illegal. They would love to leverage their tobacco and cigars with the world's economy and the world's cigars without it being having to be smuggled in the United States. you know, I know they make alcohol, rum, I believe it is. They'd love to be able to leverage their rum freely against the world's economy and use those profits to help their people in their socialistic society. But the profits are coming from doing capitalistic business. Period. Social capitalism, y'all. We're not gonna hold y'all tonight. We appreciate everybody for tuning in, for working with us. We have the Cash App $, the original Rastafunk. Yes, sir. Cash App $, the original Rastafunk. Please give. And always know that you can look in the chat if you decide you want to join our conversations, and just hit the link and we can talk about it a little further one-on-one. We appreciate you. We'll be back tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock, as we're here every Saturday, every Friday, every Sunday, 8 p.m. Internalize. We love you. Peace. We out.